What is up, ladies and gentlemen? But most of all, you ladies out there, thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg. Trade season begins. Split cow! We just got massive breaking news out of the NBA of a three-team trade between the Los Angeles Lakers, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the Utah Jazz. A trade in which former MVP Russell Westbrook has finally been traded from the Lakers. The Lakers got back D'Angelo Russell. There's a lot to talk about and a lot to break down on this trade from all three teams' perspective. I think one team won this trade, one team feels good about the trade, and one team I have no idea what they're doing with this trade. And we're going to break all of that down because there's a lot of players that are involved in this trade. Let's talk about the players involved first. The Los Angeles Lakers got D'Angelo Russell, Malik Beasley, and Jared Vanderbilt, two forwards from the Utah Jazz, and D'Angelo Russell, obviously point guard for the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Utah Jazz got Russell Westbrook in the Lakers 2027 first round pick. That one is top 4 protected, so if it lands 1 through 4, the Jazz will not get that pick. It'll get moved back to the next year. The Minnesota Timberwolves got Mike Conley and a couple second round picks in the future. So a lot going down here. I also believe Juan Toscano Anderson was in this trade. I believe he went to Utah. And then Nickeil Alexander-Walker went to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So we're going to look at this because there's so much to dive into as far as how these guys are playing, what they'll bring to their team, what this means for the future. I think when we see a trade like this, we see the direction that teams are going, especially a team like the Utah Jazz when you're trading away 2 rotation level players in Jared Vanderbilt and Malik Beasley, 2 guys that can play on the wing. You're clearly headed downward this season, but you stacked up more picks. So we're going to talk about all that the Jazz have as far as future assets. Before we get into that, take a second to subscribe to the channel. We finally hit 1,000 subscribers, but that's not where we stop. We're going to keep grinding, keep growing, because that's what we do on the Break the Silence podcast. So take a second to subscribe to the channel. More NBA news ahead. So I want to start with the Los Angeles Lakers because I think they came out as the winners of this trade. Now, I'm not ready to call the Los Angeles Lakers contenders, but they're considerably better than they were yesterday when we watched them when LeBron broke that record in against OKC. The Los Angeles Lakers needed guys that they could put on the court and were good enough to play a rotation in the NBA. They added D'Angelo Russell, who for the season is averaging 17.9 points, 6.2 assists, and is actually really ticked up as of late. He was playing very good with the Minnesota Timberwolves, playing good with Anthony Edwards. He's also a consistent three-point shooter. On the season, he's 39%, 46.5% from the field. D'Angelo Russell is going to add consistent shooting, going to add a point guard presence that maybe makes a little better decisions than their previous point guard that they just traded. And I think that this is a trade that gives the Lakers a chance to get into the playoffs. And once you're in the playoffs with how the West is pretty open this year, you feel like you have a little bit of a chance. Now, I'm still high on the Denver Nuggets. I think the Denver Nuggets are the best team in the Western Conference. But if you get in the playoffs, anything can happen when you have LeBron James and potentially Anthony Davis if he can figure out what was going on. He was playing weird last night. They also added Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt. And that's what I talk about when you're adding 2 guys that can play valuable minutes and 2 wing guys where the Lakers were absolutely lacking. When you're playing Austin Reeves and Troy Brown Jr. and some of these guys that, you know, they're okay players, but they're really not starting level players on a championship roster. So being able to replace some of those guys and add real talent with Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt, and you only gave up one of those one of those future first round picks, the 2027 one, you still technically have the 2029. Will they make another move? I would kind of doubt it, but they have that option if they still choose to do so. If they could get rid of Pat Bev and that pick for something, who knows there. But Malik Beasley averages 13.4 points, 3.6 rebounds. Malik Beasley shoots 36% from the 3-point line, which isn't great, but it's all right. He's a guy that can go out there, play defense at can play defense at a pretty good level, is able to space the floor a little bit with LeBron James. Just another wing that they can go out there and play. 13.4 points per game is pretty solid for Malik Beasley. He's a guy that I like. Jared Vanderbilt, the other part of this trade, I think is going to be a very valuable power forward for the Los Angeles Lakers. He's a very good rebounder on the season, averaging 8.3 points, 7.9 rebounds. He is also efficient. He's not much of a shooter, 33% from three, doesn't take the three ball a whole lot, 56% from the field though. So Jared Vanderbilt is going to add a little bit more of that traditional power forward presence, a guy that can rebound, a guy that can defend, a guy that will efficiently score from inside the paint. So I really like the Jared Vanderbilt pickup for the Los Angeles Lakers. So you added three guys that are rotation level players. And that's exactly what the Lakers needed. They just needed some guys that could actually play basketball. They could play basketball and go out there, know their role, and perform their role. So for the Los Angeles Lakers, I feel like you got to be happy about this move. You're better than you were yesterday. Are you championship contenders by adding Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and D'Lo? I don't know that I necessarily say that. In fact, I would still probably have them somewhere around the 5-6 best team in the Western Conference. But that's up to see if, you have LeBron James, one of the greatest players of all time. You have Anthony Davis, one of the top 20 players in the NBA right now. So you have some dudes that potentially could give you a chance. I want to move on to the Utah Jazz because I think they're one of the very interesting parts of this trade. The Utah Jazz took on Russell Westbrook's contract, and there's $16.2 million remaining on that contract for this season. And they also got that top 4 protected pick in 2027. The Utah Jazz have now stacked up 15 first-round picks. They have Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, Colin Sexton, I screwed up this guy's name, Abaji, the new guy that they just traded for from Cleveland. And they will have this offseason projected $60 million in cap space. That is a team that is so well set up for the future, a team that went through an absolute rebuild, but has young, good players, has a ton of money, and a ton of draft picks. If you're going through a rebuild, you're in the perfect place. And I think Danny Ainge, again, wins another trade, comes out again on top, feeling like he got good value. Maybe you would have liked a little bit more from Malik Beasley, Mike Conley, and Jared Vanderbilt, but you got more picks, you got a ton of cap space, and I think if you're the Utah Jazz, you feel like you can make a very quick turnaround. If you get a quality draft pick this year, and then you go into next season, and you have another opportunity, you go into the offseason, you have all this money, you could potentially add a key piece, and we'll see what the Utah Jazz do there. It's said that they might buy out Russell Westbrook's contract. I wouldn't be surprised about that. There's really no point in having him play in Utah. Sounds like there's a chance that Russell Westbrook might be going to the Clippers if he ends up available, or who knows, we'll see, where Russell Westbrook ends up. I don't know how many suitors there would be for Russell Westbrook. He still maybe has some value off the bench, but he also has to be clear what his role is. And it has to be something that he buys into. And I don't think thus far, even when you watch the Lakers last night, he had 27 points, but he's always getting like 6 or 7 turnovers. And it's like he's still trying to do a little too much for what I think he should do. He blew up on Darvin Ham in the locker room last night. It sounded like at halftime they said that there was some confrontation there. Getting into the Russell Westbrook business is risky if you have a quality squad. Now, if you have a young squad, or, maybe a team that just needs some entertainment, maybe you try to take on Russell Westbrook, see if you can get anything out of him, and go from there. Final part of this trade, the Minnesota Timberwolves. They got back Mike Conley, like I said, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and I believe 2 second-round picks. This is the part of the trade that I'm genuinely confused by, and maybe I'm missing something, but Mike Conley for the season is averaging 10.7 points, 7.7 assists, so can pass the basketball at a high level, shoots the 3 ball at about 36%. My only possible way that I'm trying to buy into it a little bit is that they think that Mike Conley, a distributor, will be better for Anthony Edwards in the development of him going forward. But Anthony Edwards is such a talented young basketball player, and I've raved about Anthony Edwards a million times. I think he'll be a future top 10 player in the NBA. I think he has that kind of skill set, maybe even better. But he maybe shouldn't be the main ball handler all the time. So you do need someone to take some of that pressure off. So Mike Conley can maybe help take some of that pressure off of Anthony Edwards. But I also feel like D'Angelo Russell was doing some of that and giving you some of the scoring. output. He was only averaging 1 less assist per game than Mike Conley is. But where are the Minnesota Timberwolves going? Are they building for this year? Like, you're trying to win a title this year by trading for Mike Conley? Did this get you closer to a title? I don't know necessarily that I would say that's the case. Mike Conley does have 1 more year on his contract. If they were to cut him next year, he would get $14.3 million guaranteed. Otherwise, he's going to be making a lot of money. So are the Minnesota Timberwolves planning on trying to go for it all this year? That's why I was so confused. And honestly, the Minnesota Timberwolves right now are, to me, the most confusing front office in the NBA that I can think of, because you went out and you have this young budding superstar in Anthony Edwards, a guy who flashed in the playoffs last year, played at a high level. This team that almost made the second round of the playoffs. If they play a little better in crunch time, they make the second round. You went out and you traded for Rudy Gobert, saying basically, let's win now. Except Anthony Edwards is not quite in his prime to where it makes sense to say, hey, let's win now, young fella. I would have let this guy develop for a couple years and play with some of those guys that he was playing with last year. But they went out, got Rudy Gobert, said, let's win now. Karl Anthony Towns has been out for a while. They've been playing okay basketball, kind of up and down with the Timberwolves. But now going for Mike Conley, it almost feels like you're trying again to make a little bit more of a push, getting a veteran guy like that, because the second round picks aren't any real assets. But potentially they're saying that Mike Conley could be a guy that's not on. Oh, D'Angelo Russell was on his way out. I apologize. Lost my train of thought there a little bit. But they said D'Angelo Russell was possibly on his way out. Maybe that's the case. All in all, I'm just not really sure what the Minnesota Timberwolves are doing. I think if you're the Lakers, you're happy about this trade. If you're the Jazz, you're happy about this trade. And TBD on the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's all we got for you as far as this trade. We're going to wait for more news. Really excited to keep talking hoops. Don't forget to subscribe. Cyborg out.